Welcome to this video on upgrading to Filr 5. My name is Robin Redgrave. I'm a solutions consultant based out of the UK. So before we go into the actual upgrade process, let's have a look at what's actually new in Filr 5. So the first three things I want to cover are all part of Filr Advanced. We've added in DLP capabilities around a defined administrative user being able to set DLP options on a file or net folder. Initially, this is just going to be to prevent the sharing of the item externally, but we'll build on that as time goes by. We've added file versioning, but this is only for personal storage currently. What this allows you to do is, as a file in personal storage is overwritten or edited, then the previous version of that file is kept. And you have a capability to download that file, to go and promote that to be the current version if need be, and so on. So you can keep those previous versions of files, and there is deletion policies in place there, so a set number of versions, I think it's set at 10, and you've got version aging as well, so if there's a version that's older than 6 months it will get deleted, that you can specify that time period. We've also added multi-factor authentication for external users. So typically this is going to be SMS or email one-time password. So when you share a file with an external user, once they've registered, and the registration process now includes a mobile number, when they authenticate to access a shared file, they'll be prompted for an additional bit of information. Just be aware that there is an additional Filr license required for this. It's a special external user license that gives you the Advanced Authentication Limited entitlement, which is the MFA mechanism that we use there. Just to make it clear, existing non-MFA external users are still free of charge. We've also done some changes in the appliance itself. We're now running on SLES 15 SP4. Some of the other packages have been updated as well. The all-in-one server or the web server, we've changed the requirements there. By default now it's 20 gigabytes of RAM, which actually was the recommended memory that we were suggesting for 4.3, I think. And just something to bear in mind with that, and I'll talk about this a bit later on, is that we do say that 60% of the RAM should be dedicated for the Java memory. Something else that's changed is the deployment files. So for instance, with VMware, we used to have OVF files. We're now going to be using OVA files in Filr 5. Something else you'll notice here is that we're now supporting KVM as well with the QCOW2 format. So if you've got a KVM hypervisor, we can now run Filr, albeit it's still unsupported. Let's just go through some of the preparation that you need to think about before beginning your upgrade. So first of all, upgrading is only supported from the latest versions of Filr. So that's 4.3.1.1 or 4.3.1.2. That latter patch really is only if you're using a VA share that's based on CIFS. It just makes the upgrading a little bit easier. If you're on a previous version of 4 that's not later versions, then you need to patch up to the latest version. And I know a lot of people looking at the telemetry are still running 4.0 and have never patched their environment at all, but obviously it's a good idea as new patches and versions come out to keep up to the Filr current version. If you're running on Filr 3 of some version, then you're going to need to upgrade to Filr 4 first. There is a YouTube video. I think most probably it'd be easier just to do a search for it. That's a bit more complex than what we're going to go through today with the 4 to 5 upgrade, in that you need to migrate the database. We changed the preferred database from MySQL to Postgres, and you need to move the database across to Postgres, and it also involved doing a full reindex of the system. Once you've gone up to Filr 4.0, then you need to patch that to Filr 4.3.1.1 or 4.3.1.2 before you can actually undertake the upgrading that we're going through here. If you are on Filr 3, then do consider just doing a brand new install. It will be less downtime because indexes don't need to be regenerated. You can build the new system whilst the old system's still running. But you should not do this if you've got existing shares, comments, local users and groups, or indeed personal storage. All of that is obviously part of your current environment. You need to migrate to maintain that information, otherwise you'll lose it with a new install. Also, do read the documentation. It will have up-to-date information on upgrading, information that's come out after I've done this video. And just to clarify, if you're not patched, you need to register your current appliances for updates. You can get the registration code from the activations tab in your SLD. If you wanted to, you can go against a SMT server. And for those of you that are running Filr in an air-gapped environment, and I know some of you are for security reasons and so on, there are ways that you can patch that as well. Once you've got that up to the current version, then you need to do things like removing any snapshots that you've got on that appliance. The reason for that is that we're going to be taking the data disk to the new appliance, and if there's a snapshot on it, we obviously have problems with knowing which snapshot to take. Also, I tend to do a backup of the existing system. That's just me being ultra safe. What we're doing here is totally non-invasive to the current Filr environment and doesn't affect it in any way, so you can just roll back to that very easily. So you also obviously need to download the Filr 5 appliances. You can find them in the download section on SLD, and then you need to deploy those into your hypervisor. Do adjust the memory and processors as required. As I said, the default now is 20 gig, but for instance, if you are already running your Filr web nodes with 32 gig of memory, you most probably want to adjust the memory initially for that. The other thing is just ensure that your appliances are on the correct virtual network. I know some people in the past have booted them up and they're on the wrong network and they can't find other servers that they're communicating with. So do check that as well. So let's just go through what's involved in upgrading a small deployment. And actually, I'll go through this and take you through a live update as well. So first of all, you need to power down your current Filr environment. You don't want that running during the update because we're going to grab a copy of the data disk. That's the VA storage disk. And we obviously don't want that being written to while we copy it. And we're going to take that and add it into the Filr 5 appliance. And then we're also going to create a new logging disk, the var disk as well. So let's just go and do that. So here's my Filr 4 environment. I'm just going to copy that disk 2, which is the VA storage disk, across. There we go. Then I need to add that to my Filr 5 environment that I've already imported. Let me just add that to the correct network because that's the wrong network. We don't want to have problems there. So I'm just going to add that existing hard disk to my system here. And where is it? It's in here. There we go. And I'm just going to convert that there. And I'm going to add a new hard disk for the logging disk. So I'm creating a new disk. Let's set that to 50 and I'll set as a single file. Just to make life easy, you obviously may want to split it up and indeed have different space available there. I'm just going to call this disk 3, or you may want to call it var or something like that. So there we go, all set and configured. So next we just need to power up the new appliance. We don't want to power up the old appliance because it's going to be using the same IP address. And as we said, it's totally untouched. So if need be, we can do a rollback. When it boots, you're going to be prompted to enter the VA admin and the root password. You can change them at that point if you wanted to. So what it's prompting you for is not the current passwords, but what you want the passwords to be. And then you just need to wait for the appliance to come up. Just be aware that as it comes up, it's going to be updating the database schema. We are adding a few tables and new attributes to the system there. So let's give that a shot. So I'm just going to power on the new appliance. So just be aware that if you boot up your Filr 5 environment and it then takes you through a standard install prompting you for network information, time, servers, and so on, then what's most probably happened is one of two things. One, you've taken the var disk rather than the VA storage disk from the Filr 4 environment, or you've gone and mixed up your new var disk and this VA storage disk, and it's using what you had as the var disk as the VA storage, and so it just thinks it's a brand new install. So just be aware if that happens, you most probably just need to start over and redeploy the disk. So here it is prompting me for passwords. I'll use the same passwords, but I can reset them here if I wanted to something new. And away we go. So that will bring up the system for us. Let's just continue and just go through what we need to do for a large upgrade. And the large upgrade is much the same as we just went through there. So again, you need to power down your existing appliances. But when you power down, same as always, power down the Filr web nodes first, then the search appliances and database appliances. You don't want to take away the search appliance or database appliance whilst the web appliance is running. So do it in the right order. We then copy that data disk across to the new Filr appliances, and we create that new logging disk for each appliance. Then power up the new appliances, and as we saw, you're going to get prompted for the VA admin and the root passwords there. Again, do this in the right order. First the search and the database appliance, and then finally the web appliance. And as I said, if you're running VA Share on CIFS, then there may be some additional information that you need to enter for that during the upgrade process. And as far as the database is concerned, if you're running a non-appliance database, your existing database environment that you're using, or indeed something like MS SQL, then typically you don't need to upgrade that, but just check the version number is still supported in the documentation. And as I said, be aware that the schema is going to be extended. We've got some additional tables and some new fields that need to be added to that there. As far as the content editor is concerned, that's upgraded in exactly the same way. You just take that second disk, add it to the appliance and bring it up. But do consider adding a new content editor appliance on the old IP address. It's very quick and easy to do it takes less than 10 minutes to add into the system. So you may want to do it that way instead of upgrading the existing environment. So there are some post-upgrade tasks that we need to do. First of all, we need to set up online updates and patch the system if need be. As I'm doing this video, there are no current patches for Filr 5, but by the time you're doing it, there may be, so do go and patch the system. What you need to do also is just go and change that JVM memory. Remember I said that it needs to be about 60% of the total memory, but because we've got the settings from your previous system, that memory is not going to be reset. It's still going to be at the setting you had for Filr 4. So do consider setting that there. And finally, you need to download your Filr 5 license from the SLD. That was going to be in the activation section. There is a 60-day eval license on the appliances, but typically that's not going to work on an upgrade because it's 60 days from the very first install. So it will remember that you installed it 3 years ago and that license won't work. And then just run reconfigure Filr server. So let's just go through some of that. So let's just use VA admin. At least it's come up. That's the old address that I had set in my bookmarks, so that's working. Log in as VA admin, put in the password that I entered, and there we go. So first of all, setting up online updates, I just need to come in here and put my email address in here and my activation key in there, and then click register. And if there are any patches to apply, then there'll be a big red exclamation mark here. And indeed, if there are any product upgrade patches, then I'll get a big red exclamation mark there, and I'll need to go in there and do exactly the same thing to register that channel. Let's just go into the configuration side here. I mentioned about the JVM. Obviously, we've got 20 gig on this appliance at the moment, but this is still bringing through the settings I had in the Filr 4 environment. So I'm just going to set that to 12, which is 60% of 20 gig. If I click OK to that, and then I want to bring in that Filr 5 license that we talked about. So I'm just going to browse for that, and there we go. In this case, I've got the beta license. I'm just going to apply that and do a reconfigure. So there we go. So once that comes up, we just need to check that the user interface is working quite happily. Something just to bear in mind is I have noticed sometimes you need to clear the browser cache because some of the graphics may be from the Filr 4 and those have been cached. So just bear that in mind if you start getting things looking a little bit strange on the screen. If you've made changes to SSF properties, and obviously you should never really make changes to the SSF properties, but the SSF ext properties, if you've made changes to things like the language files or created your own Latin version of Filr, you'll need to bring those language files across. And indeed, if you've modified the interface by editing the CSS files, you'll need to reapply those changes as well. If you've got changes in SSF ext properties, they should be taken over into the new appliance. Then finally, just wait a week or two and check everything is working okay, at which point then just remove the Filr 4 appliances. You don't need them anymore for a rollback, so you can get rid of them and save that disk space that they'll be taking up. Let's just go and check that it actually is working. So here, graphics have come through quite happily from my splash screen. I'm just going to log in as myself. And there we go. I've got my files coming through quite happily. I've got access to my net folders and so on. So it's all working fine. And let's just go and have a look at the administration console. And you can see here that's Filr 5.0. And you can see some of the new options here. I've got the data leak prevention options there. I've got the file versioning as well. And then on the advanced authentication, I've got the option for external users as well. So you can see that's all up and running. So thank you for listening to this video. I hope you found it useful, and good luck with your upgrading.